So, how exactly does a 14-year-old starving immigrant who steps off a boat with absolutely nothing end up controlling entire governments? I mean, it literally sounds like the plot of a Hollywood movie, right? But this is the real, documented history of Sam Zemurray. Today, we're going to trace the timeline of what has to be one of the most ruthless, brilliant, and honestly cinematic rises to power in modern history. Let's get right into it. I really want you to imagine the massive gap we're talking about here. On one side, you've got this desperate kid who couldn't speak a single word of English, fighting just to afford one meal a day. And then, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have a man wielding basically godlike power over Central America, dictating the fate of nations, orchestrating coups, and controlling global trade routes. How in the world do you cross a chasm that wide? Well, the timeline starts in pure tragedy. Born into a poor farming family in Western Russia back in 1877, Sam's world completely collapsed when he was just 10 years old and his father died. Survival became this brutal daily struggle. By the time he hit 14, he realized he had to escape if his family was going to survive at all. So he makes a totally heart-wrenching decision. He gathers up whatever tiny amount of money the family has, leaves his mother and his childhood behind, and buys a one-way ticket to America. He endured a grueling 15-day sea voyage across the world, armed with nothing but a scrap of paper that had the address of a distant uncle. Section 1. A penniless 14-year-old immigrant. When Sam finally set foot in America, reality hit him hard. He was completely alone. He didn't know the language, and people often just ignored him or they pretended not to understand his broken attempts to communicate. But Sam had a superpower: extreme observation. He started taking on the most menial jobs you can possibly imagine: sweeping floors, acting as a helper in small shops, running door-to-door deliveries. But here's the thing: he wasn't just working, he was studying. Those chaotic streets and warehouses, they became his business school. He absorbed every single detail of how commerce worked. He listened in on conversations, watched suppliers, and studied what customers actually wanted. He saved every penny he could, just waiting for the right opportunity. Section 2. The discarded banana opportunity. Okay, so after 2 years in America, 16-year-old Sam saw something that completely changed his life. Realizing the big money was in massive volumes of goods, he hopped on a train, went 230 kilometers to a busy, totally chaotic port in Alabama where cargo ships unloaded fruit from Central America. And there, he watched the undisputed monopoly of the time, the giant United Fruit Company. And while watching them, he spotted a massive, ignored flaw in their rigid grading system. See, they sorted bananas into 3 piles. Tier 1, the premium green bananas meant to be shipped across the entire country. Tier 2, the yellow ones sold at a discount locally. And Tier 3, the spotted, ripe bananas. United Fruit considered these absolute trash. Because they wouldn't survive a long train ride, a staggering 15% of their total stock was simply tossed aside to rot. What happens next is just a sheer, unbelievable risk. Sam walks right up to the United Fruit employees and literally offers to buy their trash. He takes his entire life savings, $50, which is roughly $5,340 in today's money, and he gambles every single cent of it to buy thousands of bananas that nobody else wanted. The corporate workers thought this 16-year-old kid with broken English was out of his mind, but hey, they happily took his money. Section 3. Racing against the clock. Almost immediately, the harsh reality of the business hit him. Sam loads his newly purchased trash fruit onto a train to go sell them in neighboring towns. He had done all the math, right? But he didn't account for one crucial thing. The train system was agonizingly slow. It stopped constantly. For driver changes, track clearances, taking on new cargo, sometimes it just sat there for hours, and the clock is mercilessly ticking. A few hours of delay in that stifling heat meant total financial ruin for Sam. Right before his eyes, his cargo is turning brown. If he waits until the final destination, he'll have nothing left but mush. He is quite literally watching his life savings rot away. So he has to make a desperate pivot. He literally jumps off the slow-moving train at a station and sprints to a Western Union agency. There, he executes this brilliant, out-of-the-box hack. He begs the telegraph operator to message every local merchant, grocery store, and street vendor at all the upcoming stations on the route. His message? A cheap banana shipment is coming your way. Sell them for me and you get a commission. And the crazy thing? It works flawlessly. As the train rolls into the next few stations, crowds of buyers are actually already waiting on the platforms. It takes a week of stopping from station to station, but he completely sells out. He walks away with $190 total in his pocket, netting a pure $50 profit. But more importantly than the money, he proved his concept. He found a massive gap in the market that the corporate giants were entirely ignoring. It's a timeless lesson, really, in looking for value exactly where others refuse to. Moving on to Section 4, Challenging the Banana Giant. Now, Sam didn't just stop there. By 1903, he had repeated and scaled this system so aggressively that he was pulling in massive sales. He went from making hundreds to making millions. But as you can imagine, when you make millions in a monopoly's backyard, they notice. On one side, you have Sam's agile operations, just flooding the market with cheap bananas and paying for everything in cash. On the other side, you have the corporate giant, United Fruit, waking up to the threat, and they aggressively retaliate. They use their immense power to delay his shipments, abruptly cut his supply in half, and intentionally dump their own fruit at rock-bottom prices just to wipe out Sam's profit margins. They wanted to crush the underdog, plain and simple. Section 5. Deep into the jumble. Sam quickly realizes a fundamental truth of business. To survive against a giant, you absolutely need total control of your supply chain. He couldn't rely on United Fruit's leftovers anymore. He needed to import bananas directly from the source. Now, this required massive upfront capital. So he formed a really bold partnership with an investor named Ashbel Hubbard. Together, they bought a shipping fleet and purchased the Cuyamel Fruit Company, which held over 100 acres of prime land in Central America. And in a highly surprising twist of strategy, Sam actually allowed his rival, United Fruit Company, to take a 10% stake in his new venture in exchange for the capital he desperately needed to get it off the ground. But here is where Sam truly separates himself from the pack. While the executives of United Fruit sat in the comfort of American ports and fancy boardrooms, Sam packed up and moved directly into the deadly Central American jungles. We're talking extreme heat, venomous snakes, and the constant, very real threat of malaria. He braved all of that, just so he could understand the ground reality with his own two eyes. This was his ultimate advantage, ground-level mastery. He didn't just point fingers from an air-conditioned office. He networked with local politicians to secure the best fertile land on the cheap. But more importantly, drawing on his Russian farming roots, he physically worked alongside his laborers. I mean, he was out there with a machete clearing jungle trails and planting seeds in the mud. He even built an entire settlement village in the middle of the jungle for his workers. This hands-on, blood-and-sweat approach earned him deep respect from the locals. It gave him a mastery of the supply chain that no executive reading a report back in New York could ever match. Section 6. The Ultimate Empire Gamble. At this point, Sam was expanding aggressively, matching United Fruit's prices. But the risks were mounting fast. Floods, pests, and droughts constantly threatened the crops. He was heavily in debt, and the banks flat out refused to give him a single extra loan. Then, a chance to quietly buy massive amounts of prime land arises, but his conservative partner, Hubbard, wants to stop expanding and just settle their debts. The conflict between the two partners reaches an absolute boiling point. It's a total clash of visions. But Sam, he refuses to stop. Driven into a corner, he turns to the shadows. To buy out his partner and execute his grand vision, Sam makes an incredibly dangerous proposal. Turned away by all the legitimate banks, he borrows from the criminal underworld, accepting a brutal, back-breaking 50% interest rate. He risks absolute financial ruin and, honestly, his life, just to remove Hubbard, gain 90% ownership, and secure total, unchecked control of his company. He put everything on the line, the money he had and a whole lot of money he didn't have. It was all or nothing. Which leaves us with a final, provocative question. Is a billion-dollar empire built on careful planning or the sheer, terrifying willingness to risk absolutely everything? Sam Zemurray proved it was the latter. And, as you'll see, this was just the prologue, because this penniless immigrant who built an empire from discarded fruit was about to enter a phase where he wasn't just dealing with companies anymore. He was about to start dealing with dictators, funding private armies, and overthrowing entire governments. But that is a story for our next explainer.
Who should be the next success story?